What's up, kings and queens? It's Dan from Daft Previews, and I'm back here once again to do another comprehensive preview on the NBA player props available on this two-game slate. Now, I do understand that the Super Bowl is going to be taking all the attention away today, but the NBA is still on. That means there's still money to be made. So in this video, I'll be on a deep dive on every single player that's currently available. We'll look at their form lines, we'll look at their props, we'll look at their matchups, we'll talk about what's good and what isn't. I do all this so you can have all the information possible to make the most educated decision when it comes to your betting, whether you're doing parlays, multis, single bets. I got you covered, my boy. So I'll be sharing my screen. We'll go through outlier.bet. If you guys are interested in using this, I do have a 7-day free trial in the description box below. Now let's get into it. Let's go. Now we're kicking things off with the Miami Heat versus the Boston Celtics. Now, in this particular game, Jimmy Butler is a game time decision. He's questionable for personal reasons. He did miss Friday's practice due to personal reasons, but he's hopeful to play against Boston. Now, if he is unable to go, Duncan Robinson, Jaime Jaquez, Haywood Highsmith, Caleb Martin, they would all presumably absorb his minutes if he's unable to go. So at the moment, we've got a lot of the Boston Celtics starting lineup and Jimmy Butler available to dive through. So let's have a look at Jimmy Butler first, and then we'll get through the Boston Celtics players. So starting off with his points line. Currently, it'd be at 19.5, obviously, if he does play. The Boston Celtics, in terms of the matchup, allow the 11th fewest points to small forwards. Now, we can see that he's covered this line in 6 of his last 10 games. In head-to-head matchups against the Boston Celtics, he's covered this in 6 of his last 11. He's played them twice this season, and he scored 14 and 17 points. So he's gone under in both games against them this season. In terms of minutes, let's have a look at that. He played 33 and 29 minutes, a lot less than what he's used to playing. Looking into his last 10 games, let's have a look at Jimmy's minutes. He's playing 34.1 minutes per game, but he's only attempting 12.7 attempts. So it really comes down to, is Jimmy going to take these shots? He's obviously getting to the line quite well, 7.3 attempts, and he's making over 1 3-pointer per game. So he's not a prolific three-point shooter by any stretch of the imagination, but he seems to be putting up a lot more three-pointers in his most recent form. So looking at this, I'd obviously lean to the under. I don't like betting on Jimmy Butler unless it's the playoffs anyway, but Boston fully healthy. The Miami Heat, they do have a bit more depth scoring-wise. Terry Rozier, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, Jimmy. And then at any point, Jaquez can step in, Duncan Robinson potentially. They can get some shots up, and as well as Caleb Martin, right? So they're somewhat deep. I wouldn't say they're a great team, but somewhat deep. And Jimmy Butler, if he doesn't have to score 20 points, he's not going to. But it is a difficult matchup against the Boston Celtics. So, yeah, look, I do lean to the under for Jimmy, but not saying to play it, right? So looking at his assist prop, though, that line is at 4.5. In terms of assists allowed, the Boston Celtics allow the 14th fewest assists to small forwards on the season. Checking his form, though, in his last 10 games, he's hit this in 3 of his last 10. Last 2 have been remarkable. Orlando had 8, and against the Spurs, he also had 11. Looking at his head-to-head matchup, how he's gone against the Celtics in the past, he's done quite well. 8 of his last 11 games, he's gone over in his assist prop. He's got under in his last 2, which are the 2 games this season. Having a closer look at that, the Boston Celtics won both of those games. The first game, they won by 8 points, and the following game, they won by 33 points in a blowout. That was a home game for Miami as well. So, yeah, looking at his assist prop, his recent form is pretty good, but his form against Boston in the last 2 are down. But in terms of his recent form, it's only his last 2 games, right? So, yeah, look, I'm a bit on the fence on this one. I still got no read. I've got no strong feelings here about Jimmy Butler. But let's check his rebound prop real quick, and then we can get to the Boston Boys. In terms of the matchup, the Celtics allow the 7th most rebounds to small forwards. Now, Jimmy's covered his rebound line in 6 of his last 10 games, which is pretty good, but he's covered it in 6 of his last 7. Just looking at the split of rebounds real quick, and we can see he does go through stretches where he's getting a lot of offensive rebounds. So his rebound numbers are actually quite good. Last 10. Looking at head-to-head, we can see that he's covered this in 7 of his last 11. So the last 2 games against the Boston Celtics, he went under in every single prop. Points, rebounds, and his assists. Jumping into Jason Tatum's props now on this one. Now, his points line is over 26.5. In terms of his matchup, the Miami Heat allow the 13th fewest points to power forwards. He's hit this line in 5 of his last 10 games. He's hit it very inconsistently. So, following the trend line, he's most likely going under. In head-to-head matchups with the Miami Heat, he's gone under in 3 straight games. Most importantly, he went under in the 2 games they played this season. In terms of minutes, played 41 and 32 minutes in the blowout loss. So, very heavy minutes up against the Miami Heat. And looking at his last 10, he's playing 35.6 minutes per game. He's still attempting the 19.4 shots per game and 8.7 3-pointers. He's shooting at 47% from the field. So he's taking a high volume of shots here. And the insight from Outlier is that Jason Tatum has failed to exceed 26.5 points in 4 of his last 5 games on the road, where he's averaging 21.8 points per game. So this is the part where we want to dive a little bit deeper to figure out exactly what is going on here. So let's have a look at his away games only. So we can see here in away games, Jason Tatum's covered this line in 4 of his last 10, but only in 1 of his last 5 games. The game where he did cover it was against the Dallas Mavericks. And that Dallas Mavericks, I think they allow the 2nd or 3rd most points to power forward. So matchup-wise, that was a very easy game for him. Outside of that, he's gone under this line. Last away game was up against the Miami Heat, apparently. So they had a very long homestand, the Boston Celtics, by the looks of things. So Jason Tatum on the road, definitely not as effective as him being at home. The next thing I wanted to check was the spread. So if the Boston Celtics were to win by the spread margin, which is 5+, Jason Tatum has covered this line in 5 of his last 10. So even that's an even split. And if we look at the games where Jason Tatum plays more than 30 minutes per game, which is most games anyway, so I don't know what the fuck I'm fucking around with that. Let's jump into his next prop. Check out his assists real quick. Looking at his assist prop, the line's at 4.5. You can get that at plus money. The Miami Heat allow the 12th most assists to power forwards. Now, his recent form in this is excellent. He's hit this in 5 of his last 6, 6 of his last 10 games. So I don't mind that. Looking at head-to-head matchups, he's hit this in 6 of his last 13. He had 5 assists in the first matchup against Miami this year. Follow that up with 4 assists in a blowout. So I don't mind this assist at all. As you can see here, they're calling out that he's hit this in 5 of his last 7, where he's averaging 6.7 assists per game. So in terms of recent form, Jason Tatum assists, I don't mind that. And look, if you're getting this over in assists at plus money, plus 100, then yeah, definitely something that I'd look to take. If it was your normal minus 110 or whatever it may be, then I probably wouldn't. I'm on the fence about that. But to get Jason Tatum at plus money to cover a line that he's covered well against his opponent, look at that. He's covered that in 4 of his last 6 against the Miami Heat, and he's covered it in 5 of his last 6 games. So not minding Jason Tatum assists just in terms of his form. Having a quick look at his rebounds. His line for rebounds is 7.5. The Miami Heat allow the 9th fewest rebounds to power forwards. Now, Jason Tatum's covered this line in 7 of his last 10 games. Looking at how he's gone on the road, he's covered this in 6 of his last 10 road games. So I don't mind that. Let's have a look at his head-to-head matchup against Miami, and he's rebounded extremely well. 11 out of 13 games against Miami, he's covered this rebound line, which is pretty impressive. So, look, the matchup is difficult, but he's covered it anyway, right? So that's a very interesting stat. He's covered it in both games against Miami this year. I think what I'd be interested in playing is probably his rebounds and his assists. The points line, definitely a bit hesitant about. So in this, rebounds and assists, he's covered in 9 of his last 13 games against the Miami Heat. And looking at his last 10 games, he's covered this in 6 of his last 10. He's covered this in 5 of his last 6. He's absolutely crushed it in 5 of his last 6. So Jason Tatum, rebounds and assists, potentially. But what was it? It wasn't his rebound. That was his assist line, right? If you can get this at plus money, then that's definitely what I'd be looking at. So I'm just going to quickly check my sports book to see what odds I'm getting. Right, so I've checked the 2 sports books that I mainly use. One of them I was getting plus money, which is great. The other one I was getting close to plus money. I was getting minus 104, but the other one I've got it at plus 100. So snap that up straight away. So Jason Tatum assists. If you can't get great odds for his assists, then rebounds and assists seems like a decent prop for Jason Tatum. He's rebounded extremely well against the Miami Heat, and he's done quite well against that recently. So That's Jason Tatum. And if you're looking at parlays, potentially lowering both. He will cover 6 rebounds for sure, and then you might take him for 4 assists. So that's not too bad. Let's have a look at his running mate, Jaylen Brown. Now, his points prop is at 18.5. In terms of the matchup, the Miami Heat allow the 10th fewest points to small forwards. Now, Jaylen Brown's only covered this line in 3 of his last 10 games. Against the Miami Heat, he's covered in 8 of his last 12. The 2 games this year, he scored 27 and 18 points. Looking at Jaylen Brown's numbers on the road, we can see that he's covered this in 6 of his last 10 road games. So it's a little bit more favorable for him on the road, but I don't like betting on Jaylen Brown whatsoever, to be honest. So matchup is somewhat difficult. He's hasn't played that well recently. I know he's covered this well against Miami in the past. Went slightly under in his last game against Miami, but look, I do like it better than Jason Tatum's points prop. I'm not going to lie to you, 18.5 points, quite low for someone like Jaylen Brown. But yeah, I'm just not feeling him right now. But let's have a look at his assist prop. His line for assists is at 3.5. He's covered this in 6 out of his last 10 games. The Miami Heat allow the 12th most assists to small forwards. In head-to-head matchups against Miami, he's covered this in 6 of his last 12. The 2 games this year, 1 assist, and then in the blowout win, Jaylen Brown had 5 assists. So that's quite interesting. But yeah, not a strong read. He's not someone who can rack these up on a consistent basis. Unless you've got a good script in your mind as to how he can cover this assist prop, then take it for sure. But for me, the odds pretty standard at 110. It's not screaming out to me at the moment. Let's have a look at his rebound prop. Now, this is capable of popping off at times. You just got to find the right matchup. So his line's at 5.5. He's covered this in 6 consecutive games, Jaylen Brown. So he's been rebounding quite well. The Miami Heat allow the 12th fewest rebounds to small forwards. So head-to-head matchups against Miami, he's hit this in 7 of his last 12. The 2 games this year, 6 and 4 rebounds. So I'm trying to look at the key numbers here to see where the safe spot is for him. Like, can we take him for a lower line where he hits it quite well against Miami? So if you look at 4 rebounds, he's hit that in 11 of the last 12 games against the Miami Heat. And if we're looking at 4 rebounds based on his last 20 games, he's hit this in 17 of his last 20 games, 4 boards. So, yeah, I'm not completely sold on his full line at minus 119. I think he gets very close to it, though. I can see him ending on 5, but I'd be definitely confident in the 4. Will he definitely cover 5.5? I can't tell you, right? So this isn't screaming out to me either as an obvious pick. So looking at Jaylen Brown, pretty hesitant on all props because he's quite an inconsistent player. I'd probably say the rebound prop is the one that I'm most confident if I had to pick any of them. But yeah, I'm not really sold on anything related to Jaylen Brown right now. Having a look at the big man, Kristaps Porzingis. His points line is at 18.5 as well, plus 100 at the moment. So if the odds are that great, definitely something that I'm interested in having a look at. He's covered this in 6 of his last 10. He's covered in 3 consecutive games against Memphis, Atlanta, and Washington. The matchup today is difficult, though. The Miami Heat allow the 2nd fewest points to centers. And looking at this, Washington had no centers whatsoever. Atlanta, Clint Capella was missing. And Memphis, their defense against centers is awful as well because they don't have a big man either. Different story here. We've got Bam Adebayo starting at number 5. So interested to see how Kristaps has gone in the 2 games this year. And there it is. He scored 17 points in their first game against them, and then 19 points most recently in the blowout up against Miami Heat. So in this game, he only played 20 minutes. All right. If you look at his last 10 games, he's probably playing close to 30. And there it is, 30.2 minutes to be exact. So over his last 10, he's playing 30.2 minutes. He's averaging 14.4 field goal attempts. Up against Miami, what do we see here? 2 games this year, 25.4 minutes, 10.5 attempts. So what that means is if Kristaps can get to his average where he's playing 30 minutes, and if he's attempting close to 15 shots per game, 14 shots per game, I think he covers this line easily. He covered it 9 times in the most recent matchup, but once again, there was a blowout that happened there. So I don't hate this points prop here for Kristaps Porzingis because the game should be closer. It's rare that you see back-to-back blowouts when the same teams play each other. So one thing I noticed with Kristaps Porzingis, line opened up at 17.5. 30 minutes later, that line moved to 18.5. So we're getting plus money for it at the moment. So early bettors definitely jump on definitely jumping on Kristaps Porzingis points lines. If this line has moved to 19.5 by the time you start watching it or you get a chance, probably not as strong, but at 18.5, I can definitely fuck with that right now. Look, matchup is difficult, but his recent form is great, and he's got it done against Miami before, playing less minutes and taking less shots than he's averaging right now. So Kristaps Porzingis points prop, we don't mind that. Let's have a quick look at his assist prop. His line for that is 1.5. The Miami Heat allow the second fewest assists to centers. He's hit this in 6 of his last 10, and his 2 games against Miami, he's gone under it. So to go over is minus 120, which means you'll get plus money if you take the under here. But that's a very sweaty bet. For Kristaps Porzingis to get 2 assists, I don't think I could put myself through that much pain. Rebound-wise, his line is at 6.5. Miami Heat allow the 12th most rebounds to centers on the season. Kristaps Porzingis has hit this line in 6 of his last 10 games. And in his last matchup against the Miami Heat, he had 4 rebounds. Again, that was in a blowout. He only played 20 minutes. And the matchup prior, which was a lot closer, he had 9 rebounds in that game. So Kristaps Porzingis rebounds, I'm a little bit hesitant on it. Maybe if we just check his rebounds just on the road. So rebounds on the road, he's gone under in 6 consecutive games. So that even gives me less confidence to take his rebounds. Although road games against Miami, he only had 4. So, yeah, look, I'm a bit hesitant to take Kristaps Porzingis over on boards, that's for sure. You can get the over at minus 119, which means the under would be plus money, you'd assume, or close to. Yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit sweaty, isn't it? Maybe, check this out real quick. So just because we're leaning on the under for assists and we're leaning on the under for rebounds, if we have a look at his rebounds and assists, we see what we can get there. So under 8.5 rebounds and assists for Kristaps Porzingis. If we're looking at the under has cashed in 4 of his last 10. So he's actually been playing quite well. But the under cashed in his last game against Miami Heat. So even that's not giving me the right vibes. That's not what I wanted to see. Assists allowed, it works out well. Rebounds allowed, matchups not as difficult. So yeah, for Kristaps, definitely the points, and I just stay away from his rebounds and assists based on what we're seeing right here. We're doing a dive into Drew Holiday. Now, Drew Holiday usually scores 17 plus points or he scores less than 8. And I've seen this same type of graph all year with him. His line is always at about 12.5, and he usually absolutely kills it or he crashes and burns. So every time I see him to talk about Drew Holiday points, I say, you might as well take him for 15 plus points because the 12.5, he's never just going to hit that anyway. He's good for 15 points or you take him for less than 10 because that's how Drew Holiday goes. In terms of matchup, though, the Miami Heat allow the 7th fewest points to point guards. Drew Holiday's hit this in 6 of his last 10. And in head-to-head matchups against the Miami Heat, and look, the number 17 is also prevalent in here. He scored 17 points in both of his games against the Miami Heat. Like, check this out. If you go to his last 20, how often does he finish around this actual points on him? 12.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So 5 of the last 20 games is where the sportsbook was probably right around his line. Every other game, he's gone well under or he's gone well over it. So might be something to look at if you can look at some alt lines. Take a look at Drew Holiday. Over 15, you can maybe take it up to 17 if you want. But over 15 points, or you take him for under. Now, I'm personally leaning to the over right now. The matchup's a little bit difficult, but scored 17 points in his last 2 games.
Baby wants to sit on your lap.
The baby wants to sit on my lap? Yeah? Okay.
I'm going to go to the office.
You're going to go to the office. Okay.
Baby wants to sit on daddy's lap.
The baby wants to sit on daddy's lap? Okay. So, this is my special guest. This is my daughter's baby. Trying to get this on out to you as soon as I can, so apologies for the interruptions. Okay, where were we? Talking about Drew Holiday and his points. He's had 2 games with 17 plus against the Miami Heat. In those particular games, he played 32.5 minutes. He shot the ball 10.5 times, and he shot a great percentage. That's what you're really looking for with Drew Holiday. And if we look at his last 10, look at similar stats here, we see that he's averaging 10 attempts per game. The games he goes over, he usually shoots very well. Games he goes under, his field goal percentage is quite poor. So he's not going to cover this line on volume. It's really going to be on percentage. Oh, here's a nice little stat from Outlier. Drew Holiday has exceeded 12.5 points in 4 of his last 5 games on the road. So as we saw with Tatum and Brown on the road, they've been a little bit average. But look at Drew Holiday on the road. He's covered this in 7 of his last 10 games. And the numbers, it's still the magic numbers for Drew Holiday still exist. Over 15 points or less than 10. Like that's his range right there. So looking at his performance on the road now, that gives me a stronger feeling up in my loin to lean to the over. I'm not going to take his over 12.5. I'm letting you know now. I'm probably going to take it at over 14.5, which is 15 points. And just having a look here, you can get that for plus 185 at the moment. So definitely one to look at. I'm going to check my sports book and jump on this real quick, and then I'll get right back to you. All right, I'm back. I checked my 2 sports book. One of them, I got the price for Drew Holiday at plus 170. And the other one, I got it at plus 190. So I snapped that one up real quick. So pretty juicy odds. So for Drew Holiday, definitely I'm leaning towards the over at the moment, but I'm not playing the 12.5. I'm taking the 14.5 because I'm getting much better odds for it. So just a bit of smart betting, I like to think. Let's look at his assist prop, though. His line is at 4.5. Miami Heat allow the 12th most assists to point guards. He's covered this in 4 of his last 10 games. And in head-to-head matchups with the Heat this season, he's gone over in both of those games. So 7 and 5 assists for Drew Holiday. Taking it down to just his road games to see what that form is like. And check this out for Drew Holiday. Oh, shit. I got a baby in the background. Drew Holiday's covered this in 9 of his last 10 games on the road, which is pretty spicy to me. So I'm feeling Drew Holiday in this one. I hope he doesn't break my heart. So he's crushed it. Line at 4.5. He's gone over. He's finished on the hook of 5. Not the hook, but he's just hit it in only 2 of his last 10 games. He's really exceeded it. He's hit 7+ in 5 of his last 10 games. So if you're up for a long shot, Drew Holiday assists. Definitely not a bad way to go. And then looking at his rebounds, his line for that is at 4.5. The Miami Heat allow the 10th fewest 10th fewest rebounds to point guards. 5 of his last 10. In both head-to-head matchups, he's covered this line. He had 10 and 5 rebounds. Let's check out his last 10 games on the road. Don't tell me it's all green. Oh, my God. This guy is a road machine. He's a road warrior. He's covered this rebound line in 9 of his last 10 games, which is unbelievable. And you can get his over 4.5 in rebounds pretty much close to plus money too. And looking at let's just have a look at his PRA, because this man is freakish. His PRA in his last 10, he's covered in 7 of his last 10. On the road, he's covered his PRA in 7 of his last 10, so it's not as arousing. The only letdown, if we have a look at it, is his points prop. So rebounds and assists on the road, he's been killing it, I believe. No, I was wrong. Actually, that's on the road. He's the road. Okay. That's his rebounds and assists on the road. He's covered that in 9 of his last 10. Points, rebounds, and assists on the road, he's covered in 7 of his last 10. So this guy is a road warrior, though. That's crazy. Okay, let me just gather my thoughts real quick. So just looking at his rebounds again, you can get this for close to plus money. He's covered that in 9 of his last 10. He's had 4+ in every single game. Also had 4+ rebounds in that game against the Miami Heat too. What was it? Assists on the road. Let me refresh my memory on this one. So his assist prop, he's covered in both games against Miami. Last 10 games is a little bit average, but on the road only, he's killed it. 9 out of his last 10. So rebounds and assists on the road, he's wet like water. Points prop on the road, he's not too bad either. 7 of his last 10. So the way I'm going to play this, I'm going to take his 15+ points. On the road, we know that the magic line for Drew Holiday is clearly over 15 and it's under 10. Yes, that's my little girl in the back right there. I'm taking the 15 points. I do like his rebounds and assists, though, so I might play those as their own play. And we'll look to take him over 8.5 rebounds and assists, because on the road, he's hit this in 9 of his last 10 games. Check that out, his rebounds and assists. So I'll take that as a single bet and take the over 15 points for Drew Holiday. That's just purely because of his road form. And he's hit this both times against the Miami Heat as well. Check this out. 17 and 10 rebounds and assists for Drew Holiday. All right, the last player to look through on this one is Derek White. He's my lookalike. We've got the same hairstyle, same barber. Derek White. His points line is over 13.5. Line open up at 12.5, and we've started to see a little bit of movement. You can currently get that at plus 100. He's hit this in 6 of his last 10 games. And in terms of the matchup, the Miami Heat allow the 15th fewest. So they're pretty much in the middle of the league in terms of points allowed to shooting guards. In head-to-head matchups against the Miami Heat, he's played quite well. The 2 games this season, 28 and 15 points. He's hit this in 7 of his last 13 games against them. Let's check his stats on the road. See if we get aroused by this. And it's not too bad. 6 out of his last 10 road games, he's covered this points line. He did cover it in his last game against Miami. Look, it's not too bad at all for Derek White. The Boston Celtics, pretty much, you can see not any, but all players really contribute, especially from their starting 5. They score a whole lot of points, and they shoot a lot of threes. So Derek White points prop at plus money. I don't hate it. I think there's probably better ones on the board, but not hating this one at all. Checking his assist prop, his line's at 3.5. The Miami Heat, allow the 15th most assists to shooting guards on the season. He's covered this quite well more recently, hitting this in 5 of his last 6 games, 6 out of his last 10 in total. In head-to-head matchups against Miami, he's covered this only 4 of his last 13. He did have 6 assists against them when they last match up. And on the road, let's check Derek White's assists in this one. You can see that he's hit this in 5 of his last 10, but relatively inconsistent. He did have 6 against Miami, but yeah, not really feeling it. This isn't screaming out to me the way that Drew Holiday's numbers did. So let's check his 3-pointers made, perhaps, because he dumps a whole lot of those. His line's at 2.5. He's hit this in 6 of his last 10. And check that out. 9 of his last 13 games, Derek White has covered this line of 2.5 3-pointers. You can get that at plus 110. It's not looking too bad, actually. In terms of 3-pointers made, the Miami Heat allow the 12th most 3-pointers to shooting guards. So I don't hate that. You can see that he's hit 2+ 3-pointers in every single game. In 13 straight games against Miami, he's hit at least 2. And in his last 10, probably a little bit more inconsistent. Let's check his attempts out, though. He's attempting 7.2 on average. He's had 2 games where he's gone 0 from 4 from deep and 1 from 5 against the Lakers. But outside of that, he's done quite well. So I don't mind that. A Derek White 3-point prop, you can get that at plus money, and he's done it quite well against the Miami Heat. So I wouldn't put it past him to knock down a few. I just want to check his attempts, actually. He's averaging 6.6 3-point attempts against the Miami Heat, which is a little bit lower than his average over the last 10. So if he can put up enough 3-pointers, I'm confident we can see him. If he can take about 6 to 7, I'd be happy with that. 6 to 7, and we only need to make 2. So he only needs to shoot 33% from the field. He's shooting 48% against the Miami Heat. And in his last 10, he's shooting at 30%. So his percentages are quite down more recently. Probably why we're seeing favorable odds and lines, but I don't mind that. Derek White for over 2.5 3-pointers. Let me sit on that. Okay. Just had a quick short break, and now I'm back. I was thinking about Derek White as I was taking care of some business. And what I'm thinking, I checked the odds. Definitely can get him for over 2.5 3-pointers at plus money, which he has hit in 9 of his last 13. So I really like that form against Miami Heat. And he still hit this in 6 of his last 10, right? So even though there's a lot of games where he's gone under, he's crushed this in a lot of these other games. So the matchup isn't too bad. And I think I'm going to be taking Derek White. But I'm going to put together a little parlay. I was also thinking about that. So stay tuned. Let's have a look at that after we check his rebound prop real quick. His rebound props at 3.5. He's hit this in 5 of his last 10. Against the Miami Heat, he did have 6 rebounds in both of their matchups this season. Prior to that, probably not the best performances. But looking in his last 10 games on the road, how well has he rebounded? He's covered it in 6 of his last 10. So the matchup's not the worst. Miami Heat allowing the 10th most rebounds to shooting guards, but I think there are much better plays that we've probably seen already. Okay, that's the Boston versus Miami preview done. I wanted to let you know that I've already cooked together a same-game parlay for this one. So up to you whether you choose to follow. But I'm taking Kristaps Porzingis for 15 points. I don't mind him at 18.5. That line's probably moving on its way up, but taking him for 15 because I do like my Drew Holiday singles a little bit more. So Kristaps for 15 points, taking Drew Holiday for 4 assists. I think the 4 assists is a safer pick than 4 rebounds. And I'm taking Derek White for 2 3-pointers made. And those 3 legs together, I got for $2.62. That's here in Australia. So for those in the US, you'll get that for plus 162. So plus money same game parlay is 3 players that I do like based on the analysis that I've just done. Let me know in the comments section if you choose to ride with me. Now let's get into the next game. It's the Sacramento Kings versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I believe everybody's lined up and matched up. There's no big outs, no game time decisions. So this is pretty good. We get to see all the different players which are available. Let's kick it off with the All-Star first. Starting with SGA. So first, the OKC are on a back-to-back. They just got absolutely smashed by the Dallas Mavericks. SGA, quiet, 25 points. So his line in this one is 31.5. Covered this in 4 of his last 10. He's gone under in 4 consecutive games. In terms of his matchup, Sacramento defense, 17th fewest points per game to point guard, so they're about in the middle of the league. And looking in head-to-head matchups, he's killed them late in his last 3. 37, 33, and 43 points against the Sacramento Kings. And in these games, he's playing an average of 37.8 minutes, and he's attempting an on average 25 shots. Now, checking his last 10, we can see he's only playing 34.2 minutes, but difficult to get minutes when you're getting blown out. But his minutes aren't as heavy, so you really be banking on him to play 37 to 38 minutes in this game. He's attempting on average 19 field goal attempts, whereas we saw up against the Kings in the high 20s. So provided he gets the volume, he can probably hit this, but I'm not confident in taking his points, but right now he's not playing that well, even though he's done this against the Kings before because he shot the ball a lot. So checking it out, the Oklahoma City are at home. So let's look to see how he performs at home. He's covered this of 6 of his last 10 home games. So it's definitely a little bit better, but SGA points prop, they don't seem to move that much. He always, at his best, he hovers around 31.5 points. So I can't confidently say whether he will go over it or go under it. Looking at his assist prop, his line's at 6.5. The Sacramento Kings allow the 5th most assists to point guard. So he's got a good matchup here for assists. He's hit this in 6 out of his last 10. And in the 3 games against the Kings, he's gone for 7, 5, and 9. So his last 3 games have all been on the road. Hasn't faced the Kings when they've come into Oklahoma City. But let's check his home games. Last 10 home games, he's covered this in 7 out of his last 10. So pretty strong numbers. Definitely leaning to the over in this one. I don't mind the over. The odds for this, though, are minus 140. So you take a little bit of a hit, bit of juice on this one. So that makes me a little bit hesitant, but it also means that the sportsbook believe that he's most likely to go over. But the matchup is good. His form at home is great. He's hit it against the Sacramento Kings in 2 out of his last 3. I don't mind that. So line opened up at 7, moved to 6.5, but we'll see. So I don't mind SGA for assists. They're hoping we can find some better plays on the board, but let's have a look. Checking out his rebound prop. His line's at 5.5. He's hit this in 6 of his last 10. The Kings do allow the 4th most rebounds to point guards. In head-to-head matchups, he's covered in his last 2 with 7 and 6 rebounds. Looking at his last 10 home games, let's see how he's been rebounding the ball. And he's been rebounding quite well. 7 out of his last 10, he's cut with this line. So that is very interesting. So the matchup is good. 70% hit rate over your last 10. I can definitely fuck with that. So points-wise, I'm not pretty confident on. Assists and rebounds, definitely something I can lean on. If we just look at his rebounds plus assists and see if we can get similar trends. And we don't. So he's hit this in 4 out of his last 10 games. Against Sacramento, 15, 12, and 8 rebounds and assists. And looking at his last 10 home games, he's hit this in 6 out of his last 10. I think the key, when he has a good game in one, it doesn't necessarily make up for the other because usually he's pretty one-sided, isn't he? So, I'm not sure about SGA. I just want to have a quick look at his rebounds and assists again. Remind myself, the rebound matchup is good. The assist matchup is good. But his last 10, 6 out of his last 10 for rebounds. And for assists, 6 out of his last 10 as well. And a lot of these, they don't happen on the same game. So that's why when you combine the two, rebounds and assists, it looks even worse. So SGA, even though the matchup is there, I'm a little bit hesitant. If we're thinking about parlays, 4 assists, he's hitting every single game in his last 10. And rebounds, he's hit 4 rebounds in 9 of his last 10 games. So maybe if you take both of them down to 4, could be some good legs for your parlay, perhaps. But let's see if we can find some other juice within this game. Jalen Williams, so he's one of the players I backed today, and he was terrible, only scoring 9 points. His line was set at 18.5. He's hit this in 7 of his last 10. In terms of the matchup, the Kings allow the 6th most points to power forward. So he had a great matchup against Dallas and stunk. So hopefully he can get some redemption today if we choose to back him. But he's hit this in 7 out of his last 10. His games against the Sacramento Kings, he has struggled though. So he's played them twice this year. He scored 14 and 5 points. Got under in both. So that doesn't give me much confidence. Looking at his last 10 home games, we can see that he's covered this line in 6 of his last 10 games at home. He has scored 15 plus points in 9 of them. And then looking at his last 10 games in general, we can see he scored 15 plus points in 8 of his last 10 games. But against the Kings, he's failed to score 15 points the last 2 times they played. So even that makes me a little bit cautious. The good again, similar to SGA, good matchup, but the form isn't telling me to take it. So I'm a little bit hesitant right now, but maybe you guys can let me know in the comment section what your thoughts are on J-Dub. Let's have a look at his assists and his rebound lines. Assist lines at 4.5. The Sacramento Kings allow the 2nd most assists to power forwards. He's hit this in 6 out of his last 10, and he only had 2 and 3 in his last matchup against the Sacramento Kings. So that's a little bit disappointing. Looking at his home games, he's covered this in only 2 of his last 10 home games. So he passes the ball much better on the road, obviously. So I'm not loving that either. Let's have a look at his rebound prop. That prop's at 4.5. You can get that for plus money. He's hit this in 3 of his last 10 games. Against the Kings, he had 5 and 4 his last 2 matchups. So he did rebound a little bit better against his lines, I guess. Last 10 games at home, he's covered this in only 3 of his last 10. So the form lines that do look good for J-Dub, we can still pick holes in them. So I, for one, am not feeling it. Let's just have a look at his PRA because I'm not feeling any of his lines. Maybe we can see something in here. If you're looking at his PRA, it's at 28.5. He's only covered this in 3 of his last 10. And against the Sacramento Kings, he's only covered this once. So, yeah, look, naturally, he's got good matchups for points, assists, and he doesn't have a bad matchup for rebounds. The matchup is there, but his recent performances haven't been there, and his performance against the Kings, that hasn't been there either. So, yeah, that's quite an interesting one for me. At the moment, leaning the Jalen Williams PRA under, and that could be a bit emotional for me because I did bet on him against Dallas, and he sucked, right? So, yeah, leaning the PRA for sure for Jalen Williams. Let's see what else we can find. Stick with the Thunder players. Let's have a quick look at Chet Holmgren. His line for points is at 17.5. Sacramento Kings allow the 6th fewest points to centers on the season. He's hit this in 4 of his last 10. Against the Sacramento Kings, he went under both times, scoring 12 and 14 points. In those games, he played 29 and 30 minutes with an average of 12 shot attempts. Looking at his last 10 games, he's playing 29.7 minutes and he's averaging 11.4 shot attempts. So if he's only going to shoot the ball 12 times, he's not going to cover this line, pretty much. He hasn't done it against the Kings. Any of the games, let's have a look. Which games did he cover in? Pelicans, Nuggets, Raptors, Utah. So against the Pelicans, he took 16 shots. Against the Nuggets, he took 13 shots. Against the Raptors, he took 17. And against the Jazz, he took 13. So pretty much if he doesn't shoot the ball at least 13 times, he's not going to cover this line, which he's shown us over here. He's only shot the ball 12 times on average against the Kings. Looking at his last 10, he's averaging 11.4 shots per game. So the matchup is difficult. He's gone under against them in the past. His last 10, he's gone under in 6 of his last 10 games. If we look at his home games, and that tells me he usually goes under, I hate to say it, but leaning Chet under of 10 at home. So not the most convincing number, but yeah, definitely leaning towards the under for Chet Holmgren. Let's check his assists. His assist line's at 2.5. He's covered that in 6 out of his last 10 games. The matchup is average. Kings are about middle of the field when it comes to assists to centers. In his last 2 games against the Kings, he had only 1 assist in both of those games. Last 10 games at home, though, let's check that out. He's gone over in 8 of his last 10 games. So that is very interesting. Just checking it. He hasn't. The last 2 games where he played the Kings, they were both on the road. And as you can see at home, definitely covering this line very well, Chet Holmgren. Minus 120 odds, so it's a little bit too juice for me. But what this tells me is I wouldn't take the under on his assist, but I don't think the numbers are strong enough for me to really take the over. But let's see. I don't mind his assist. Maybe 2 assists for some parlays. I'm not too sure. Let's check out his rebounds prop. He's not the best rebounder in his position. Sacramento Kings have one of the best rebounders in the league against Domantas Sabonis. Now, the Kings, they do allow the 10th most rebounds to centers in this season. He's line at 8.5. He's covered in 6 out of his last 10 games, which isn't too bad. Against the Kings, he's had 7 and 11 rebounds. Last 10 games at home, you can see that he's covered this line in 3 out of his last 10 games. So a bit of conflicting information. There's no Chet prop that I'd be like, yeah, let's take the over. Let me quickly check his blocks because we know what he's capable of hitting. Block line is at 2.5, but that is at plus 140. He's hit this in 5 of his last 10. Against the Kings, he had 1 game with 3, 1 game with 1. And is there a block party happening when he's at home? Let's check that out. 5 from his last 10. So that's not very convincing. Let's have a look at his PRA, though. I want to just see his overall performance. He's hit this in 5 of his last 10. He obviously went under in both of his games against the Sacramento Kings. And when he's at home, what are we looking at here? At home, he's only hit this in 3 of his last 10 games. Right. So the matchup is difficult for his points. I think, yeah, really just the points prop is where I'd be leaning the under. The assist, I think he can cover his assist line. He'll get 2 to 3. So I think that's pretty much on the money. Rebounds, I'm really unsure of. So at the moment, definitely leaning the under in his points for Chet Holmgren. Let's have a look at my man Josh Giddey real quick. Points lines at 11.5. He's hit this in 4 out of his last 10. Against the Kings, these are the 2 games that I'd really be focusing on because the games last year, Josh Giddey was playing a whole lot of minutes. He covered it in both of his games against the Kings this year. They do allow the 10th most points to overall, and to shooting guards, they allow the 3rd most points in the league. So matchup-wise, it's pretty good for Josh Giddey. Let's check him out at home. Hopefully this is all green. It's not too bad. 6 out of his last 10 home games, he's covered this line. And if you can get that at plus 100 for him to go over 11.5, that's definitely something that I'd be leaning on at the moment. Josh Giddey. Checking his assists, his line's at 4.5. The Sacramento Kings allow the 14th most assists to shooting guards. And he's hit this in 4 out of his last 10. He's covered this in 4 out of his last 5. He had 5 and 4 assists against the Kings. But checking him out at home, he's covered this in 5 of his last 10 home games. So assist-wise, I'm not getting strong vibes there for Josh Giddey. Rebound-wise, Sacramento Kings allow the fewest rebounds to shooting guards on the season. Giddey's covered this line in 3 out of his last 10. Against the Kings, he has had some success against them in the past. Looking at Josh Giddey at home, we can see that he's covered this line in 4 out of his last 10. So even rebound-wise, that's not getting me too aroused at all. I think the points prop, if I was going to play Josh Giddey, provided it stays at plus money, would probably be the best one for me. Let me refresh my mind on this one. Home games, 6 out of his last 10, and last 2 home games against the Kings, 18 and 8. So last 2 games against the Kings this season, though, were both on the road, where he scored 13 and 8 points. In those games, he played 26 and 28 minutes. He attempted 10 and 14 shots. Looking at his last 5 games coming into this, he's averaging 26.9 minutes and he's attempting on average 11.2 shots. So provided he can get 10 plus attempts, I like our chances for Josh Giddey covering that 11.5. Jump into the Sacramento Kings players. Let's start with Domantas Sabonis. Point lines at 19.5. OKC, pretty much middle of the pack, 17th in points allowed to centers. Sabonis has covered this line in 3 out of his last 10. Against the OKC Thunder, he's only covered in 1 of his last 5. He went under in his last 2 games against them this season. Checking him out on the road, though, he's covered this line in 4 out of his last 10. So all signs point to an under for Sabonis, but the man's a machine. He does get quite close to this number a lot, so I think that'd be a very sweaty bet if you took the under. Let's have a look at his assists, though. His line's at 8.5. He's covered this in 5 of his last 10 games. Against the OKC Thunder, he's covered in 3 out of his last 5. This season, 13 and 7 assists in the 2 games. Let's check out how he is in away games. We can see that Sabonis is covered in 6 out of his last 10 away games. So in terms of the matchup is pretty good. OKC allowing the 5th most assists to centers, though. At 8.5, it's a very big line. And look, we know that he can hit it, but he can also go well under it, right? So, yeah, I'm a little bit uncertain around the Sabonis assist line. With rebounds, you'll probably find there's more consistency. He's got a good matchup. The OKC Thunder allow the 5th most rebounds to centers. His line is at 13.5, though. And he's covered that in 6 out of his last 10. So don't get me wrong. Definitely capable of covering it. Head-to-head matchups, look at that. 14, 15, 13, 13, and 16. So rebounding excellently against the OKC Thunder. What I'd be interested in is, would you, buy a couple points and take 12.5? Because he's hit that in 5 straight games against the OKC Thunder, 12.5. A little bit more convincing. And then you might take that 12.5 for Domantas Sabonis and maybe chuck on 10 points for him, for example. That could be a play. But let's have a look at how he rebounds just on the road. Last 10 road games, he's hit this in 4 out of his last 10, but he's hit that in 4 out of his last 5. So his recent rebounding form has been excellent. Definitely one. His matchup is pretty good for rebounds and assists, but that assist prop might be a little bit too much for me to handle right now. But let's just check out his rebounds plus assists because we know that his matchup is good. So he's hit this in 6 out of his last 10 games. Head-to-head matchups, he's hit this in 4 out of his last 5 against the OKC Thunder. Right. So one game he had a monstrous rebound game. The other game he had a monstrous assist game. So, look, Domantas Sabonis rebounds and assists got me feeling a certain way. The matchup is good. He's cleared that in 4 out of his last 5 head-to-head matchups. Looking at his last 10, he's covered that in 6 out of his last 10 games. Looking at his road games, he's covered that in 6 out of his last 10 road games as well. So Sabonis rebounds and assists over 22.5. I can fuck with that. If that line does move, though, I probably wouldn't take it because, this is my most confident pick, but I do like it for Sabonis. Rebounds and assists. We know he's capable of destroying up both of them. I don't hate that. Domantas Sabonis. Let's have a look at De'Aaron Fox. His points line is at 23.5. In terms of the matchup, the OKC allow the 10th most points to point guards. In his last 10 games, he's hit this 4 times. In head-to-head matchups, he's covered this in 3 straight head-to-head matchups with the OKC Thunder. So that's pretty good. I don't mind that at all. Looking at his games on the road, though, in his last 10, he's hit this in 6 out of his last 10 games. So, I haven't bet on De'Aaron Fox much this year because he's been relatively inconsistent. But the matchup is, I would say, favorable. It's not the easiest matchup on the schedule, but favorable matchup. He's hit this 6 of his last 10. He's hit this in 3 straight games against the OKC Thunder. This was the only game on the road. He scored 33 points. So I don't mind that at all for De'Aaron Fox. 23.5 is quite low. It's quite low, but I guess his form hasn't been the greatest as of late. Let's check his assist prop. His line's at 4.5. The OKC Thunder allow the 8th most assists to point guards. He's hit this in only 4 of his last 10. His last 2 games, he's been very good passing the ball. In head-to-head matchups, he's covered it in 2 out of his last 3. This was the game earlier this season where he finished on 7. And if you look at 4.5 at plus money, plus 105, that's not too bad, De'Aaron Fox, to get some assists. But it is a very recent trend where he's been killing it, right? So that doesn't give me too much confidence. The head-to-head form, this was almost 2 months ago, so that doesn't give me too much confidence either. So De'Aaron Fox, I'm a little bit on the fence about. I still feel better about Sabonis rebounds and assists consistently. He can give that to us. And the next one, who else is there? Not too many Sacramento Kings players on the board. Let's check Harrison Barnes' points. We might even check his 3-pointers. Points line's at 13.5. He's hit this in 5 out of his last 10. The OKC allow the 3rd fewest points to small forwards, though. So that could be difficult for him. Head-to-head matchups, he's gone under in 4 of his last 5. So Harrison Barnes, you're out of the equation. Let's check Kevin Huerter out. Line's at 11.5. OKC allow the 4th most points to shooting guards. Huerter's hit this line in 7 out of his last 10. He's covered this in 3 of 5 games against the OKC Thunder. And looking at his last 10 away games, he's hit this in 6 out of his last 10. So, yeah, quite interesting there for Mr. Huerter. Malik Monk might be a better option, but his lines aren't available yet. So those are his last 10 games. They're not too bad. If he does miss it, he doesn't miss it by much. Line it at 11.5. Yeah, the matchup is good. I can see him. Look, I don't know. Maybe a Kevin Herter and Josh Giddey 10 points each. That could get you close to plus money. I think that could be a parlay to think about. But is there anybody else on here? Let's have a look at Keegan Murray. Check out his points and his rebounds. Points lines at 13.5. He's hit this in 4 out of his last 10. Matchup wise, OKC allow the 6 fewest points. One thing to mention: this is a road game for the Kings, and from what I remember, Keegan Murray has had his challenges on the road. So let's check out his road games. He's hit this in 5 out of his last 10 road games. On the season, he hits this at 40% on the road. And in head-to-head matchups on the road, 20 and 13. So he scored some points against them in the past. Check that out. Those are his 5 games against OKC. He's covered in 4 out of his last 5. 2 of those games were road games, and he managed to play quite well. The 2 games this season, he scored 24 and 15 points against them. So, but yeah, his recent form is all over the place. So if anybody does bet on him, and it's for any other reason outside of he's killed them in both games that they played this year, I'd love to hear about it. So let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts are. So taking a step back as I think about the analysis from this game, what are the key things that stick out to me? Jalen Williams, don't want to touch him right now. Holmgren, don't want to touch him right now. De'Aaron Fox, don't feel like touching him. SGA, leaning the under with SGA, but yeah, with no confidence, I must say. Domantas Sabonis rebounds and assists, probably my favorite prop based off all the research that we've seen so far. Josh Giddey potentially over in his points, but yeah, I'm not making a decision on anything from this game right now. I'll probably need to dive into a little bit deeper. But if you are interested to see my final bets, if that's what you choose to follow, then I'll have them in the pinned comment. I try to aim to have that updated probably an hour after I upload this video. But I do hope this analysis has been helpful for you guys. If you did like the video, push that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. The road to 4,000 begins. So we hit a milestone of 3,000, which is pretty good. We're glowing up almost 1,000 subscribers a month, which is pretty awesome. So it's clear that you guys are loving what I'm doing. I'll keep doing what I'm doing just for you. But look, enough of my ugly head. Best of luck for all of you betting on the Super Bowl as well. Let me know if your favorite Super Bowl picks. Put them in the comment section for me because I'm yet to place a bet on that. But I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Sub to the channel cause your boy's getting busy. Coming to your line from the west side of Sydney. We've got the free picks and the juice and the daily. It's all free, you don't even have to pay me.